Ma'am, with all due respect, that trident on your uniform is for men who've earned it. Maybe you should stick to pushing paper before you embarrass yourself." The 5 younger SEALs flanking him snickered, their chests puffed out, a wall of arrogant muscle and condescension. They stood on the hallowed ground of the Naval Special Warfare Center's most advanced sniper range, a place where legends were forged in gunpowder and steel, and they saw only an intruder. A clerical error in human form. She didn't flinch. Her eyes, calm and gray as a winter sea, simply scanned the rifle range in front of her, her grip on the M210 sniper rifle steady and sure. The weapon system was an extension of her, a familiar weight that settled into her shoulder with the ease of long acquaintance. Her uniform, a standard Navy working uniform, was clean but hung loosely on her small frame, a stark contrast to the custom-tailored combat gear of the men before her. She was a ghost at a feast, an anomaly that their rigid, prejudiced worldview could not compute. But from the observation tower, Master Chief Thorne lowered his binoculars. He didn't see a woman in a uniform too big for her. He saw a ghost. He saw a posture, a way of holding her head, a stillness in her hands that he hadn't seen in 15 years, not since a sand-swept hellhole halfway around the world where a legend was born in a single, impossible shot. He saw a professional so quiet. Her presence was an absence, a void where ego was supposed to be. The young lieutenant, Mason, was still talking, his voice a grating sound against the quiet tension of the range. He was the product of a new generation, strong and capable, but infected with the belief that competence had to be loud. He mistook her silence for fear, her calm for weakness. It was an assumption that was about to be violently, irrevocably corrected. If you believe respect is earned in silence, not shouted from a pedestal, type earned in the comments below. The young lieutenant, Mason, wasn't finished. His initial jab had failed to draw a reaction, and this affront to his ego demanded escalation. He took a step closer, invading her personal space, his shadow falling over the rifle she was methodically inspecting. "I'm serious, Chief," he said, his voice dripping with a corrosive blend of faux concern and genuine contempt. "This is the final qualification for forward deployment. We're not playing games here. This equipment is for operators, not for support staff trying to play dress-up." One of his teammates chimed in, a thick-necked bruiser with a cruel smirk. "Yeah, maybe the armory made a mistake. The admin building is that way," they laughed, a harsh, barking sound that echoed slightly in the open air. The range safety officer, a young petty officer second class, shifted his weight nervously. He knew the rank on her collar demanded his deference, but the 5 gold tridents staring him down were a far more immediate and intimidating authority. He remained silent, a bystander to the slow-motion execution of professional courtesy. Chief Petty Officer Anya Sharma gave no indication she had even heard them. Her world had compressed to the task at hand. Her fingers, devoid of polish or jewelry, moved with an unnerving economy. She checked the torque on the scope rings, her touch light but firm. She ran a patch through the barrel, her movements rhythmic and practiced, a meditation in mechanical precision. Each click of the turret, each smooth slide of the bolt, was a quiet refutation of their loud ignorance. This infuriating lack of response only stoked Mason's arrogance. He saw her meticulous preparation not as professionalism, but as the hesitation of an amateur. "Look, I'm just trying to save you the humiliation," he said, his voice rising. "When you can't even hit the 800-meter target, don't say I didn't warn you. This isn't a PowerPoint presentation. This is real." His words hung in the air, a monument to his own blindness. He had judged the book by its cover, the warrior by her uniform, and in doing so, had passed a sentence upon himself. He simply didn't know it yet. For Sharma, the noise was just another variable, like the wind or the mirage. It was external, irrelevant data to be filtered out and discarded. Her focus was absolute, a state of being she had cultivated in places where a moment's distraction meant death. Her silence wasn't weakness. It was a weapon, and it was coiled, ready to strike. From the observation tower, a voice, gravelly and imbued with the unshakable authority of decades spent at the tip of the spear, crackled over the range-wide public address system. It was Master Chief Thorne. "Listen up. Today's qualification is a cold bore hostage scenario. 5 targets, Variable range from 900 to 1,550 meters. Full value wind, 15 knots gusting to 20, shifting from 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock. You have a 90-second window to engage all 5 targets upon my command. The final target is a high-value principle, partially obscured, headshot required. Failure on any target constitutes a total failure of the evolution. No sighters, no warm-ups. Your first shot is your only shot. A murmur went through the assembled operators. This wasn't a qualification, it was a punishment. A cold bore shot, the very first round fired through a clean, cold barrel, is the truest test of a sniper's skill. It demands a perfect understanding of the rifle, the ammunition, and the atmospheric conditions, a synthesis of science and instinct that few could master under pressure. And this scenario was designed to be impossible. Mason's team exchanged arrogant looks. "He must have designed this for us," one of them muttered. Time to separate the men from the boys. Mason swaggered to the firing line, confident that his raw talent would overcome the absurd difficulty. Down the line, Sharma continued her serene preparations. While the other shooters consulted advanced ballistic computers and digital wind meters, she did something that drew derisive stares. She reached into a small pouch on her belt and removed a tiny, frayed length of brown yarn, the kind used for knitting. She held it up, letting the wind play with it, her eyes half closed. She wasn't just watching it. She was reading it, deciphering the subtle eddies and currents of the air with an intimacy that no machine could replicate. It was an old-world technique, a relic from a bygone era of marksmanship, and to the younger SEALs, it was the final, pathetic proof of her incompetence. They saw a confused woman with a piece of string. Master Chief Thorne, watching through his stabilized optics, saw something else entirely. He saw the ghost of a legend, a practitioner of an art form so refined it bordered on mysticism. He saw the quiet professional preparing her canvas, not with technology, but with a deep, primal connection to her environment. The stage was set. The assumptions had been made. The silence was about to be broken. Mason and his team went first. They were undeniably skilled, the product of the world's most rigorous military training. Their movements were aggressive and confident. They settled into their positions, their high-tech gear giving them an aura of futuristic lethality. The command was given. The range erupted in a controlled, staggered volley of thunder. 4 of the first targets fell. Their shots were good, powerful, and on the mark. But the shifting wind was a phantom, a trickster that played with their calculations. On the 4th target, the hostage-taker at 1,300 meters, Mason's shot was a fraction of an inch high and to the left. It was a hit, but not a clean one. On the monitor, it flashed red, a simulated hostage casualty. Failure. The final, most difficult shot was never even taken. Mason cursed, slamming his fist into the shooting mat. He blamed the rifle's dope, a sudden gust of wind, the glare from the sun, anything but his own limitations. His arrogance, so robust just moments before, had cracked. Then, the range fell silent again. It was Chief Sharma's turn. The 5 humbled SEALs watched from the side, their expressions a mixture of pity and morbid curiosity. They expected a catastrophic failure, a complete inability to even engage the first target. Sharma moved to the firing line with a calm, deliberate grace. She didn't drop into position. She flowed into it, becoming one with the earth and her rifle. Her breathing slowed until it was barely perceptible. The world seemed to contract, the ambient noise of the bass fading into a dull hum, until all that existed was her, the M210, and the distant, shimmering targets. The 90-second clock began. Silence. 10 seconds passed. 20. Mason smirked. "She's frozen," he whispered to his teammate. Then it happened. A single, sharp crack, less a boom and more a surgical tear in the fabric of the air. The monitor for the first target, 900 meters, flashed a brilliant, perfect green. Center mass. Before the sound had fully registered, another crack followed. The second target, 1,100 meters, fell. Green. Then the third, and the fourth, the one Mason had failed. Crack. Green. Crack. Green. Each shot was a perfectly timed masterpiece, fired in the lulls between gusts of wind she had read with her simple piece of yarn. A collective, involuntary gasp swept through the onlookers. There were only 30 seconds left. Only the final, impossible target remained. The 1,550-meter shot, the partially obscured head of the high-value target. She made one final, minute adjustment to her scope, exhaled slowly, and her finger tightened on the trigger. The rifle bucked. For a heart-stopping second, nothing happened. Then, the monitor for the final target blinked, and a single, pure green circle appeared, dead center. A perfect, cold-bore, thread-the-needle headshot from nearly a mile away. The range was utterly, completely, deafeningly silent. Mason's jaw hung open. His face, tanned and cocky just minutes before, was a pale mask of pure, unadulterated disbelief. "No way," he stammered, his voice a dry rasp. That's not possible." Master Chief Thorne's voice, now devoid of its earlier instructional tone and filled with something cold and hard as forged steel, echoed from the tower. "Lieutenant Mason, secure your weapon. You and your team, my observation post." Now, there was no room for discussion in that command. It was an order forged in the crucible of absolute authority. The 5 SEALs, their arrogance stripped away layer by layer with each of Sharma's perfect shots, moved like automatons. They secured their gear and began the walk of shame up the metal stairs to the tower, each step a heavy reckoning. The air in the small, glass-enclosed room was thick with tension. Thorne didn't look at them as they entered. He stood with his back to them, his gaze fixed on the woman below who was now methodically disassembling her rifle for cleaning, her task complete, her demeanor unchanged. She was as calm in the aftermath of impossible success as she had been in the face of their insulting derision. It was the mark of a true professional. The performance was the reward, not the applause. After a long, punishing silence, Thorne finally spoke, his voice low and dangerous. "You see that chief petty officer down there, Lieutenant?" he asked, not turning around. "The one you told to push paper? The one you and your team thought was a joke?" Mason swallowed hard, his throat dry. "Master Chief, he started, but Thorne cut him off with a sharp gesture. He turned, and in his hand was a military-grade tablet. He tapped the screen and held it out for Mason to see. "You look at this," he ordered. On the screen was a standard Navy personnel file. The photo showed the same woman, Anya Sharma, with the same calm, gray eyes. But it was the text below the photo that made the blood drain from Mason's face. The words were a litany of accomplishments so profound, so far beyond his own experience, that they seemed to belong to a figure of myth, not the quiet woman on his range. The 5 men huddled around the screen, their disbelief turning to a cold, dawning horror. They hadn't just insulted a senior non-commissioned officer. They had desecrated a living icon. The narrator's voice would list the credentials from the screen, each one landing like a hammer blow. Name: Chief Petty Officer Anya Ghost Sharma. Unit: Naval Special Warfare Development Group. Classified: the name DevGru, the official designation for SEAL Team 6, hung in the air, a name spoken only in hushed, reverent tones. Combat deployments: 12. Location: classified. Mission details: classified. The screen was a sea of black redacted ink, a testament to a career spent in the deepest shadows of global conflict. Thorne scrolled down with his thumb, revealing more. Medals: Bronze Star with Valor, Silver Star, and the Navy Cross. Mason felt a wave of nausea. The Navy Cross, second only to the Medal of Honor. It was an award for heroism so extreme it bordered on suicidal. He and his men, with their handful of commendation medals and deployment ribbons, had mocked a woman who had demonstrated a level of bravery they could scarcely comprehend. Special qualifications: Master Training Specialist, DevGru Lead Sniper Instructor. The irony was a physical blow. They had tried to lecture the person who wrote the book, the master instructor who had trained the instructors who had trained them. Thorne scrolled one last time, his finger stopping on a single line of text. Special note: only active operator to successfully execute the Serpent's Eye shot in a live combat scenario. Mason's breath hitched. The Serpent's Eye wasn't a real thing. It was a legend, a campfire story told to new recruits, a shot so impossible, over such a great distance, and under such horrific conditions, that it had become a piece of SEAL folklore. It was their ghost story, their Bigfoot, their myth. And the myth was standing on their range, cleaning her rifle. Thorne switched off the tablet. "You see this trident, Lieutenant?" he said. his voice quiet but carrying the weight of a battleship. He pointed to Sharma's uniform below. Her seal trident, pinned to her chest, looked standard from a distance. But Thorn knew what to look for. It's not the same as yours. Look closer. He handed Mason his high-powered binoculars. Mason lifted them with trembling hands and focused on her chest. He saw it then. A tiny, almost imperceptible modification to the design. A small, stylized star engraved over the eagle's heart. It was the marker of a specific, ultra-classified task force, a unit so secret that most of DevGroup didn't even know it existed. It was a symbol that meant she was not just an operator. She was an apex predator among apex predators. Master Chief Thorn took a step to the edge of the observation deck, squared his shoulders, and brought his hand up in a slow, perfect, formal salute. It was a gesture of profound respect, a king bowing to a queen, a legend acknowledging a legend. And down on the range, Anya Sharma, finished with her work, paused, looked up, and gave a simple, almost imperceptible nod of acknowledgement before turning to walk away. The story of what happened on Ghost's Perch, as the range was almost immediately and permanently renamed, did not just spread, it detonated. It moved through the barracks, chow halls, and secure communication channels of the naval special warfare community with the speed and force of a flash flood. It became an instant legend, a modern-day fable with a powerful, undeniable moral. The narrative was perfect: the arrogant young bulls, the quiet and underestimated master, the impossible challenge, and the final, crushing vindication. Every detail was dissected and embellished. Her simple piece of yarn became a mystical artifact. Her calm demeanor was described as an almost supernatural focus. The 5 perfect shots were recounted as a miracle of marksmanship, a feat that defied the laws of physics. For Lieutenant Mason and his team, the aftermath was a crucible. They were not formally punished. Master Chief Thorn knew that the public humiliation and the weight of their own ignorance were a far more effective sentence than any official reprimand. They became ghosts of a different sort, cautionary tales whispered about by new trainees. They had to endure the knowing glances, the sudden silences when they entered a room, the burden of being the men who had disrespected the ghost. But to their credit, the lesson, however brutal, was learned. A few days after the incident, Mason found Chief Sharma by the armory, supervising the calibration of new optics. He approached her alone, his posture entirely changed. The arrogant swagger was gone, replaced by a deep, painful humility. He stood before her, head slightly bowed, and waited to be acknowledged. When she finally looked up, her gray eyes holding no malice, only a quiet expectation, he spoke. His voice was low, stripped of all its former bravado. "Chief," he began, "there's no excuse for my behavior. Or my team's. It was arrogant, unprofessional, and disrespectful. I was wrong. And I am truly sorry." Anya Sharma looked at him for a long moment, studying his face. She wasn't looking for shame. She was looking for understanding. She saw it there, in the set of his jaw and the honesty in his eyes. She gave a single, sharp nod. "Understood, Lieutenant," she said. And that was all. No lecture. No. "I told you so." The acceptance of his apology was as clean and efficient as her marksmanship. For Sharma, his contrition was not a victory to be savored. It was simply a necessary correction, a system returning to balance. The event had already served its purpose. A plaque was eventually mounted in the main training hall, holding the steel target from her final 1,550-meter shot. The single, perfect hole in its center was a permanent scar, a testament to the day's events. The inscription beneath it was simple, a quote attributed to Master Chief Thorn. "Competence is quiet. Assumptions are loud." The incident became more than just a story. It became a teaching tool, a cultural touchstone within the command. Master Chief Thorn integrated the story into his leadership development program for all new SEAL officers. He would stand before them, a grizzled icon of the community, and tell the tale of the 5 arrogant operators and the quiet chief petty officer. He never used Mason's name, referring to him only as the young lieutenant, because the lesson wasn't about shaming an individual. It was about inoculating the institution against the disease of ego. "The most dangerous person on the battlefield," Thorn would say, his voice a low rumble, "is never the one beating his chest. It's the one you don't see, the one you dismiss, the one you underestimate. Your arrogance is a weapon your enemy will use against you more effectively than any bullet. The day you think you have nothing left to learn is the day you begin your decline. The five SEALs, and especially Mason, underwent a profound transformation. The public humbling stripped them of their false confidence and forced them to rebuild their professional identities on a foundation of humility and genuine competence. They became better operators. They listened more and spoke less. They treated every person on the base, from the admirals to the civilian janitorial staff, with a level of respect that had been absent before. Mason, in particular, sought to learn from his mistake. He began to seek out Chief Sharma, not to apologize again, but to learn. He would ask her quiet, technical questions about wind reading, about breathing control, about the mental discipline required for their craft. She mentored him, not with grand speeches, but with quiet example and short, precise corrections. She taught him that the true art of the sniper was not in the pulling of the trigger, but in the absolute stillness that preceded it, a stillness of the body, the rifle, and most importantly, the mind. Her legacy was not destructive, it was creative. From the shattered pieces of one officer's arrogance, she forged a true leader. The ripples of that single afternoon on the range continued to expand, subtly altering the culture of the command, reinforcing the ethos that true strength lies not in image, but in action. The quiet professional had, without raising her voice, made the entire institution stronger. Years passed. The sun-bleached ranges of the Naval Special Warfare Center remained, a proving ground for new generations of warriors. On Ghost's Perch, a group of fresh-faced SEAL candidates, brimming with the nervous energy and raw confidence of youth, gathered for their first lesson in advanced marksmanship. Their instructor was a man whose presence commanded immediate and total respect. He was lean, sharp, and moved with an economy of motion that spoke of immense experience. His eyes, clear and perceptive, missed nothing. On his collar were the silver bars of a lieutenant commander, and on his chest was the same gold trident he had worn as a brash young officer. But it was worn differently now, not as a badge of arrogance, but as a mantle of responsibility. Lieutenant Commander Mason stood before the new operators. He began the day's instruction not by talking about ballistics or rifle mechanics, but by telling them a story. He guided them over to the training hall wall, to the mounted steel target with the single, perfect hole in its center. Before we fire a single shot, Mason began, his voice calm and steady. You need to learn the most important lesson you will ever receive in this community. It's a lesson about assumptions. He told them the story of a cocky young lieutenant who saw a small woman in a loose-fitting uniform and saw only weakness. He recounted, with unflinching honesty, the insults, the condescension, and the soul-crushing humiliation that followed. He spoke of the 5 impossible shots, the piece of yarn that outperformed a supercomputer, and the silent, deafening competence that had shattered his world. He didn't tell the story to shame himself, but to arm his students with the one weapon more valuable than any rifle: humility. Anya Sharma was no longer there. Her name had faded from the active rosters, her file buried under new layers of classification. She had moved on, becoming a true ghost, a whisper in the highest echelons of national security, her victories unseen, her name unknown to the public she protected. But her presence was more palpable than ever. It was there in the quiet professionalism of the instructors, in the respectful way the operators treated the support staff, in the institutional memory of the command. Her legacy was not a statue in a courtyard. It was the culture of quiet competence she had instilled. It was in the bearing of Lieutenant Commander Mason, a man who had been humbled and, in that humbling, had found the path to true leadership. The lesson of Ghost's Perch was now a foundational pillar of their ethos. The loudest man in the room is the weakest. True strength is a fortress built of silent discipline, its walls fortified by demonstrated action, not by boastful words. Respect is not a right conferred by a uniform or a title. It is a currency earned in the quiet crucible of performance, paid out in the silent acknowledgement of one's peers. The story of Chief Anya Sharma is a testament to this enduring truth. She arrived on that range as an enigma and left as a legend, not because of what she said, but because of what she did. In the face of loud, ignorant prejudice, she offered only the calm, undeniable rebuttal of absolute competence. Her 5 perfect shots were more than just feats of marksmanship. They were 5 declarations of principle. They were a statement that worth is not determined by stature, gender, or appearance, but by the relentless pursuit of excellence. She shattered more than just targets that day. She shattered assumptions, broke the back of a toxic arrogance, and reminded an entire community of warriors that the most profound power lies in humility. Her legacy was not etched onto a medal, but woven into the very fabric of the institution she served. It lives on in every new operator who is taught the story of Ghost's Perch, in every leader who remembers that true authority comes from wisdom, not volume. The quiet professional created a resounding impact, a shockwave of change that continues to ripple outward, proving that a single act of focused, undeniable skill can redirect the course of a culture. Her silence was her sermon, and her actions were her creed. For more stories where quiet competence triumphs over loud arrogance, and where silent professionalism defines a warrior's worth, subscribe to Unknown Heroine Stories.